It's Matty J. How we doing today, everyone? Fantastic day to be alive. Fantastic day to be out here. Slightly overcast, not too hot, just perfect weather, really. Not a major fan of the heat, not a major fan of the cold. So, it's sweet. Mix between like 19, 20, 21, maybe 22 is shorts and t-shirt weather, overcast. So not going to be sweating from the hot rays of the sun. It's just really bloody perfect for me, at least. I mean, but again, that's a matter of perspective, which is, I suppose, what we're here to have a bit of a chat about. Lots of people can look at this and be like, it's gloomy, it's not great. And perspective is all about, how are you going to view the situation? And believe it or not, you actually get a choice. Now, some of it, the way you look at life, that is, you've been conditioned to do. Some of it you are completely unaware of. It's just sort of become habit. Some of it you choose to learn to recognize how you're viewing a situation through what we call lenses. You might have a cynical lens. You might be very skeptical of the situation. You might be very naive to the situation, and you've got on the rose-colored glasses and everything's peachy and lovely, and you're not really looking at it objectively. It's another thing. Are you wearing an objective lens or a subjective lens? Are you looking at things through your viewpoint, or are you trying to look at things through just the straight-up facts of the day? And learning to recognize which lens you're putting on, which set of glasses you're putting on to view what's in front of you, is certainly a skill. And learning to be reflective of your perspective is something that everyone can learn. It's easier for some people, obviously, as with any skill in this life. Some things come more naturally, some things are more innate in our nature than others. And again, a lot of it comes down to your temperament, your personality, and again, your environment, what you're used to, what you were taught a lot about, what people around you spoke about, the language they used, in how they viewed the world, which sort of gears your perspective a certain way. If you're around a lot of cynical, negative people who view the world as very somber, it's a harsh life, nothing is fun, there's always something wrong. Like, you can look at this weather and say, it's overcast, wish it was more sunny. You talk a lot about the negatives. That certainly has an effect on your emotional state. But before we sort of even talk about that, we're talking about just how that's a lens in which that type of person is viewing the world. And you might have been brought up in that situation. You might recognize that is a way that you yourself view the world and how you talk in, sort of just common dialect. But it doesn't have to be. You can choose to recognize that. The first step is learning how to recognize it. Once you master that, you learn to recognize, okay, my outlook's actually quite negative. I'm quite punitive in a lot of the language that I use unnecessarily. I don't have to look at the world through a viewpoint of deficit, but what is there that is positive? What surplus do we have? What joy do we have? And it's learning to say things like, if I'm already from a negative mind frame, it's inclement weather, it's not bright and sunny, it's overcast, it's real negative. Just learning to catch that and say, well, okay, yes, but it's not thunderstorm and hail and bushfires all at the same time. You're not running for your life because of this weather. So, no, it's not optimum perfect weather for you, but it's also absolute not worst case scenario. And that is a skill, to learn to recognize that. Look, it doesn't mean that you can throw everything out in perspective, because some things really are the pits. You can't have something extremely meaningful to you, a 20-year relationship with wife and kids, and then it turns out that your partner leaves you and 2 of your 3 kids pass away, and the perspective is, at least I got, one of them. That is still an incredibly dire situation. And yes, that is a more positive light you could put on that perspective, but probably not the most helpful one to do when you're trying to understand how the grieving process and actually using the right lens to utilize the world and say, well, try to put a positive spin on a situation. And look, that's obviously an extreme example. But when you're talking about something like the weather, it's a lot easier to say, all right, let's learn this skill before we get to the extreme examples. Let's start practicing the skill. What do we have? You might have a boss who's really right in you, or they're just completely illogical in how they do work, and it's very hard to work with them. Think about the good things. Whenever somebody says something negative about somebody else, or they're negative towards you, what's a way that you can positively reframe and thank somebody else for the contribution that they've had to your life? If the boss who is giving you lots of grief, it's basically saying, you're not doing a good enough job, what can you say about that? You can say, great, I have a boss who notices where I'm at work. You might disagree with their opinion of your output, or how they manage, but the fact that you have a boss who notices you is a positive. You're recognized in the workplace, or you're thankful that this is the person who hired you, and at some stage in their life they believed that there was an opportunity that upon hiring you, you were the person who would do the job correctly. And so again, are you in a position then to ask them how you can do things differently? But the only way your mind goes to the fact of, hey, how can I have this conversation with my boss? How can I ask them? Is something I can do differently? Is if you're willing to change the perspective of, this person saying something negative to me, therefore there's a lot of negative energy, therefore I view the situation as negative. It's, okay, something negative was said to me, how can I take this as an opportunity to learn? Is this a moment where I need to learn how to decipher, take stock in what somebody's saying? Or, no, actually, that's complete BS. Learn to push that away. And so learning when to allow things to come into your psyche and let you figure something, and learning how to push them away and pivot to something else, that in itself is a skill. So when a negative situation is thrust upon you, you have an opportunity to try and turn it into a positive one from perspective. Or to look at, again, if it's not easily going to be turned into something positive, how can you learn from it? Which in and of itself is a significantly more useful outcome than just continue to add more negativity to the situation. So, recap, long story short, more or less, learning to value perspective is essential to figuring out more effective ways that are enjoyable in guiding how you view the world, guiding your life. So there't a little bit of encouragement I can pass on to you. Just trying to figure that one out. As always, have a great day. I certainly know I will.